Oil dripped from the ceiling of Blake's fixes, landing with a rhythmic plop into a bucket that Owen had forgotten to empty 3 days ago. The repair shop smelled like burnt metal and recycled air, tucked into a forgotten corner of Station Tertius 9 where nobody important ever visited. Owen preferred it that way. Important people meant important problems, and important problems usually didn't pay well enough to justify the headache. He was elbow-deep in a cargo hauler's engine when the alarms started screaming. Not the normal docking alerts or the occasional drunk pilot warnings. These were the deep, bone-shaking sirens that meant something massive had just entered restricted space without permission. Owen pulled his hand free, wiping grease on pants that were already beyond saving, and walked to his shop's single grimy window. The dreadnought hung in space like a knife made of darkness and silver. It was easily 50 times larger than anything that normally docked at Tertius 9, bristling with weapons that could turn the entire station into expanding gas. Imperial design, Owen recognized immediately. Corsari Empire, which meant someone supremely powerful and supremely dangerous had decided to visit their backwater station. Wonderful, Owen muttered, turning back to his work. Whatever political nonsense was happening out there had nothing to do with a human mechanic who could barely keep his lights on. 10 minutes later, his shop door opened. Owen didn't look up. Shop's closed for the day. Come back tomorrow. I require your services immediately. The voice carried absolute authority, the kind that expected instant obedience. Owen glanced over his shoulder and nearly dropped his wrench. The alien standing in his doorway was tall, easily 7 feet, with silver-scaled skin that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. He wore robes that probably cost more than Owen's entire shop, and his eyes were the color of molten gold. Behind him stood 6 guards in ceremonial armor, their weapons clearly not ceremonial at all. "You're Emperor Draven," Owen said stupidly, because his brain had apparently decided to stop working. "I am." Draven stepped inside, his guards filling the doorway but not entering. He carried a large container, rectangular and made of some crystalline material that hummed with contained energy. "You are Owen Blake, the mechanic who specializes in impossible repairs." "That's a generous way to describe it," Owen said, setting down his wrench. "I fix stuff other people give up on, usually because nobody else is desperate or stupid enough to try." "Perfect." Draven set the container on Owen's workbench, which groaned under the weight. "Then you are precisely who I need." Inside the container something moved. Owen leaned closer, his professional curiosity overwhelming his common sense. The creature inside looked like a dragon from ancient Earth legends, but wrong. Its scales were crystalline, catching light in ways that natural materials shouldn't. Parts of its body glowed faintly with bioluminescent patterns, while other parts looked disturbingly mechanical. Tubes and wires ran beneath transparent sections of skin pulsing weakly with energy. "What is it?" Owen breathed. "A voidworm. Her name is Ember." Draven's voice softened slightly, the first hint of emotion breaking through his imperial bearing. "She is the last of her kind. The old ones created her species millennia ago, part biological, part technological. They were companions, partners to the ancient civilization that ruled this galaxy before humans even discovered fire." Owen studied the creature more carefully. Her eyes were half open, dulled with pain. Cracks ran through her crystalline scales like broken glass. Her breathing was labored, uneven. Whatever systems kept her alive were clearly failing. What happened to her? An assassination attempt. The weapon was meant for me. Ember intercepted it. Draven's hands clenched. "I have taken her to every master engineer in the Empire. I have consulted with experts from 17 different species. Every single one has told me the same thing. She cannot be saved. The damage is too extensive. Her systems are too alien, too complex, too far degraded. And you think I can help her?" Owen asked, incredulous. "Your Majesty, I fix cargo haulers and life support systems. I've never even seen anything like her before." "Precisely." Draven met his eyes, and Owen saw something unexpected there. Desperation. "My engineers approached her like a machine to be repaired. They failed because they tried to apply logic and protocol to something that transcends both. You, Owen Blake, are known for your unconventional methods. You solve problems by ignoring the rules that tell you something cannot be done." Owen turned back to Ember. As he watched, one of her eyes focused on him, and he felt something, not words exactly, more like an emotion that wasn't his own. Pain. exhaustion, but also a flicker of hope. "I can offer you wealth beyond measure," Draven continued. "Enough credits to buy your own planet. A title, status, whatever you desire. And if I fail, then the last voidworm in existence dies. And with her, the final living link to the civilization that came before all of us." Draven's voice was steady, but Owen heard the grief beneath it. "She has been my companion since I was a child. We were raised together. I have ruled an empire spanning 40 systems, commanded fleets of warships, made decisions that affected trillions of lives. But I cannot save the one being in this universe who matters most to me." Owen looked at the Emperor, then at the dying dragon. Every logical part of his brain screamed that this was impossible, that he should refuse politely and go back to his simple repairs and his simple life. That touching this situation would bring complications he couldn't begin to imagine. Then Ember's eye met his again, and he felt that spark of hope grow stronger. "I'll need complete access," Owen said. "No interference from your engineers. No second-guessing my methods. And if I tell you I need something, I get it immediately. No bureaucracy." Draven smiled for the first time, showing sharp teeth. "Agreed. Then let's get her out of this box and see what we're dealing with." 3 days into the project, Owen had stopped sleeping in his apartment altogether. He dragged a cot into the workshop and collapsed on it for a few hours when his eyes refused to focus anymore. The rest of the time, he studied Ember with an intensity that bordered on obsession. The voidworm lay on a specially constructed platform that Draven's people had installed within hours of their agreement. She was magnificent even in her damaged state, roughly the size of a small shuttle with wings that folded against her body in crystalline segments. Her scales ranged from deep amber to brilliant gold. Though many were cracked or darkened with damage, Owen had spent the first day just scanning her, using every diagnostic tool in his shop plus several dozen more that Draven had provided. The readings made no sense. Her biology operated on principles that seemed to shift depending on when and how he measured them. Her mechanical systems weren't quite mechanical at all, but rather some fusion of technology and organic processes that human science had no framework for understanding. "You're not a machine," Owen said aloud, studying a scan of her internal structure. "And you're not an animal. You're both and neither. That's why they couldn't fix you. They kept trying to categorize you." He felt something brush against his mind, gentle as a whisper. Not words, but acknowledgement, agreement. Owen froze. "Amber, can you understand me?" The sensation came again, warmer this time. "Yes, how long have you been conscious?" Owen asked, his heart racing. "Have you been aware this whole time?" Pain flooded through him, not his own. Images flashed behind his eyes. Dozens of engineers poking, prodding, cutting into her systems while she screamed silently, trying to force artificial components into her body, while her systems rejected them in agony. Months of torture disguised as medical treatment, all while everyone assumed she was too far gone to feel anything. "Oh God," Owen whispered. "They thought you were brain dead. They had no idea." Ember's presence in his mind grew stronger, more focused. She showed him what had happened during the assassination attempt. An energy weapon designed to disrupt biomechanical systems, fired at Draven during a diplomatic ceremony. Ember throwing herself into the path, her body absorbing the weapon's full discharge. The immediate cascade failure of her systems, the desperate evacuation to the Imperial flagship, then the repairs. The Corsari engineers approaching her like a broken ship, replacing failed components with standardized technological equivalents. But Ember wasn't standardized. Every part of her was unique, grown specifically for her, connected through bonds that were as much emotional and energetic as they were physical. The foreign components were like receiving blood transfusions from incompatible donors. Her body fought them, draining her remaining energy in a futile attempt to reject the invasive materials. "They were killing you while trying to save you," Owen said, anger rising in his chest. He stood abruptly and started pulling equipment from his storage cabinets. "We need to get all that garbage out of you. Right now." He worked through the night, carefully removing the artificial components that the Imperial engineers had installed. Each extraction was delicate. The foreign materials had bonded to her systems in ways that resisted separation. But Owen had steady hands and decades of experience with stubborn machinery. More importantly, he could feel Ember guiding him, showing him through impressions and emotions where to cut, where to carefully pry apart connections. By dawn, Ember's body was free of the Imperial modifications. She was weaker in some ways, no longer propped up by the artificial supports, but Owen could feel her relief, a lightness in her presence that hadn't been there before. "Now we need to figure out what you actually need," Owen said, exhaustion making his words slur. "Not what some engineering manual says you need. What you need." He spent the next 2 days researching, diving into every database he could access about the old ones and their technology. Most of it was fragmented archaeological speculation and half-understood artifacts, but patterns emerged. The old ones hadn't built machines. They had grown them. Their technology was cultivated like plants, shaped through intention and compatibility rather than assembly lines and blueprints. Owen began growing biosynthetic components in his lab, using techniques he'd learned from xenobiology texts and adapting them with wild improvisation. He talked to Ember constantly, describing what he was doing, asking for feedback through the strange mental connection they shared. She couldn't speak in words, but her responses grew clearer. Approval felt like warmth. Rejection felt like cold. Pain was sharp and immediate. He was testing a new neural pathway component when his shop door opened. Owen glanced up to see a Corsari official enter, flanked by guards. The alien wore elaborate robes marked with engineering insignia, and his expression radiated contempt. "I am High Engineer Voss," the alien announced, Chief Technologist of the Corsari Empire. "I am here to inspect this operation and evaluate whether it should continue." "Little busy right now," Owen said, turning back to his work. "You will address me properly, human." Voss's voice sharpened. "I have served the Empire for 6 decades. I have designed warships and terraforming systems. I have constructed orbital platforms that house millions, and now I find that our Emperor has entrusted the care of an irreplaceable artifact to a grease-covered primitive working in a glorified shed." Owen set down his tools slowly and turned to face Voss fully. "That irreplaceable artifact is a living being who's been suffering for months because experts like you treated her like a broken engine. So unless you have something useful to contribute, get out of my shop." Voss's scales flushed darker with anger. "You dare, Voss!" Draven's voice cut through the confrontation like a blade. The Emperor entered the shop, moving with predatory grace. "Owen works under my direct authority. You will not interfere." "Your Majesty, I must protest." Voss bowed, but his tone remained defiant. "This human is using primitive methods, working on instinct rather than established scientific principles. He has removed all the stabilizing systems we installed. At this rate, the voidworm will be dead within a week. And yet her vital signs have improved every day since Owen began his work," Draven said coldly. "While under your care, she deteriorated daily." "Explain that, High Engineer." Voss stiffened. "Sometimes a patient must worsen before improving. We were laying groundwork for—" "You were torturing her," Owen interrupted. "She's been conscious this entire time. Every procedure you did, she felt. And she's been screaming for months while you ignored her." "Impossible," Voss scoffed. "The voidworm's neural activity showed no signs of consciousness." "Because you were looking for consciousness that operates like yours," Owen shot back. "She communicates through emotional resonance and energy patterns." "You were using the wrong instruments to measure the wrong things." Voss turned to Draven. "Your Majesty, you cannot possibly believe this. The human has no credentials, no training in— He has results." Draven moved to Ember's side, placing a hand gently on her scaled head. "I can feel the difference in her. She is returning to us." Voss's expression twisted into something ugly. "This is madness. You would trust a human over your own people? Over the engineers who have served your family for generations?" He stepped closer to Draven, lowering his voice. "Your attachment to this creature is affecting your judgment, my Emperor. Perhaps it would be merciful to simply let her pass peacefully rather than prolong." Ember's roar shook the entire shop. She raised her head for the first time in months, eyes blazing with golden light, and fixed Voss with a stare that promised violence. Voss stumbled backward, his guards rushing forward. But Draven held up a hand and everyone froze. "I think," Draven said softly, "that Ember has made her opinion of your suggestion quite clear. You are dismissed, High Engineer. Do not return to this shop." Voss left, but the look he gave Owen promised that this wasn't over. Ember's progress over the following weeks astonished everyone except Owen. Her scales brightened, the cracks slowly filling in with new crystalline growth. She could lift her head easily now, and her wings occasionally stretched and folded with increasing strength. The bioluminescent patterns beneath her scales pulsed with steady rhythm, instead of the erratic flickering that had marked her decline. But Owen had hit a wall. He sat cross-legged on the floor beside Ember's platform, studying scan results that refused to make sense. Every biosynthetic component he'd grown had integrated successfully. Her neural pathways were reconnecting. Her energy circulation had normalized. Yet something fundamental remained broken. "It's your heart," Owen said aloud, pulling up a holographic display of Ember's core structure. "Not the organ that pumps blood. The crystalline matrix at your center, the thing that powers everything else." Ember's presence touched his mind, heavy with sadness. She showed him images of her heart from before the injury. A brilliant geometric structure that pulsed with rainbow light. Now it was dim, fractured, barely functioning. Every attempt Owen had made to repair it had failed. Synthetic crystals shattered under the energy load. Biological tissues couldn't handle the power requirements. Even hybrid materials that worked perfectly in other parts of her body rejected the moment he tried to integrate them into her heart. "Why?" Owen asked, frustrated. "What makes this different? What am I missing?" Ember's response came slowly, images and emotions layering over each other until Owen began to understand. The voidworm heart wasn't something that could be built or grown in isolation. It formed in response to connection. The old ones who first created her species understood that consciousness and emotion were forms of energy, just as real as electricity or nuclear fusion. A voidworm's heart crystallized from the bond between the dragon and their companion, growing stronger as their relationship deepened. "You're telling me your heart is literally made of friendship?" Owen asked, then immediately felt stupid for the reductive description. Ember's amusement rippled through their connection, but also confirmation. "Close enough, but you had a heart before, when you first hatched or were created or whatever. How did that work?" She showed him memories of her birth, not hatching from an egg, but emerging from a crystallization chamber in an ancient facility, the old ones surrounding her, welcoming her, their minds touching hers with warmth and acceptance. Her heart had formed in those first moments of connection, growing from the collective bond of the community that created her. When that civilization fell and the old ones vanished, Ember had gone into stasis. Her heart had endured, sustained by the memory of those first bonds. When Draven's ancestors found her millennia later, she'd bonded with them. The connection had changed, evolved, but remained strong enough to maintain her heart's integrity until the assassination attempt. The weapon hadn't just damaged her physically. It had severed something in the bond between her and Draven. Not completely, but enough that her heart could no longer sustain itself. "So to fix your heart, I need to rebuild the bond," Owen said slowly. "But how? I'm not Draven. I'm barely even your friend yet, no offense." None taken. Ember's presence seemed to convey, tinged with affection. Owen stood and paced, his mind racing. "The bond has to be compatible." "That's what you're telling me. It's why the Imperial engineers failed. They tried to force incompatible materials into you. But a bond is the same. It has to grow naturally. It has to fit." An idea struck him, crazy and dangerous. "What if I bonded with you? Not to replace Draven, but to add another connection. Would that be enough to jumpstart your heart's healing?" Fear flooded through their connection, but not from Ember. She was showing him the risk. The bonding process required linking their neural systems directly, creating a feedback loop that would allow their consciousness and energy to merge temporarily. If her damaged system surged during the process, the backlash could kill Owen. If Owen's human biology couldn't handle the connection, his brain could literally burn out. And if he died while bonded, Ember would die too. "Yeah, I figured it would be something like that," Owen said, running a hand through his hair. "Any other options?" Ember showed him the alternative. She could linger in this half-alive state for perhaps a year, maybe 2. Then her heart would finally fail completely and she would slip away, slow and peaceful but inevitable. "That's not happening," Owen said firmly. "We've come too far. You've survived too much. I'm not watching you fade away because I was too scared to try." He walked to his communication panel and sent a message to Draven, requesting an immediate meeting. The Emperor arrived within the hour, his expression concerned. "What's wrong? Is she declining?" "No, she's stable," Owen assured him. "But I've figured out what's wrong, and you're not going to like the solution." He explained everything. Ember's heart, the need for bonding, the risks, Draven listened in silence, his face unreadable. When Owen finished, Draven said simply, "No." "Your Majesty, no." Draven repeated, his voice harder. "I will not allow you to risk your life. The danger is too great." "It's my life to risk," Owen argued. "And I'm willing to take the chance." "I am not." Draven's eyes flashed. "I have already lost Ember once. I will not lose you both because of a desperate gamble." "Then what do you suggest?" Owen challenged. "We can't build her a new heart. We can't repair the one she has. The only option is to help her grow a new one, and that requires a bond. If not me, then who?" "I will do it." Draven stepped forward. "I am already bonded to her. Perhaps I can strengthen our connection enough to—" "That won't work." Owen pulled up the scan data. "Your bond is damaged. It's like trying to use a broken cable to transmit power. You'd just hurt both of you worse." "Then we find another way," Draven insisted. "There is no other way." Owen's frustration boiled over. "I've been working on this for weeks. I've consulted every resource I can access. This is it. This is the only option that has any chance of success." Draven was silent for a long moment. "If you die, I will have sent a good man to his death to save someone I love." "How is that just?" "It's not about justice," Owen said quietly. "It's about what matters. You told me when you first came here that Ember is the one being in the universe who matters most to you. Well, she matters to me now too. Maybe not the same way, maybe not as deeply yet, but enough. Enough to try." Draven looked at Ember, who had been watching their exchange silently. "What do you want, old friend? Is this human's life worth the risk?" Ember's response was clear. She wanted to live. But not at the cost of Owen's death. She would accept fading away if it meant keeping him safe, "See?" Draven said. "She agrees with me." "With respect, Your Majesty, you're both wrong." Owen walked to his workbench and began pulling out equipment. "I'm not planning to die. I'm planning to succeed, and I'm doing this with or without your permission. You can stay and help, or you can leave and find out what happened later." "You stubborn, foolish human," Draven said, but there was no real anger in his voice. "If you die, I will find a way to resurrect you just so I can kill you myself." "Deal." Owen began setting up the neural interface equipment. "Now help me position these sensors. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right." They worked in tense silence, preparing the equipment. Ember watched them, her presence a constant warmth in Owen's mind. He could feel her anxiety mixed with gratitude, her fear mixed with hope. When everything was ready, Owen sat down on the floor beside Ember's platform and attached the neural interface to his temple. The device was designed for basic communication with AI systems, never intended for something like this. But Owen had modified it, enhancing its capacity and adding safeguards that might or might not actually work. "If this goes wrong," Owen said to Draven, "pull me out immediately. Don't wait. Don't hope it'll get better. Just disconnect me." "Understood." Draven stood ready beside the emergency shutoff. Owen took a deep breath and activated the interface. The world disappeared. Owen found himself floating in a space that wasn't quite space, surrounded by colors that weren't quite colors. Ember's consciousness surrounded him like an ocean, vast and ancient and overwhelmingly present. He could feel her pain as if it were his own, thousands of nerve endings screaming in protest. But beneath the pain was something else. Curiosity, wonder, joy at no longer being alone in her suffering. He felt her memories flowing through him, centuries of existence compressed into moments, the old ones working in their crystallization chambers, their minds a symphony of cooperation and shared purpose. The pride Ember felt when she first flew, testing wings that caught solar winds and rode them between worlds. The horror of watching her creators vanish, reality itself seeming to reject them as some cosmic mistake unfolded. Long ages of silence and stasis, dreaming of voices that would never return. Then Draven, a small child in the Imperial nursery, no more than 5 years old in human terms, weeping because the other children mocked his weak stature. He'd wandered into the palace's deepest vault and found the stasis chamber. His small hand pressed against the crystal, and his sadness had called to Ember across the barriers of sleep. She'd awakened for him, breaking centuries of dormancy because this child's pain resonated with her own loneliness. Owen experienced the bond forming between them. Growing up together, Draven learning to rule while Ember learned what it meant to be part of the world again. The first time they flew together, Draven clinging to her back while she showed him the universe from angles no ground-bound being could imagine. The trust between them absolute and unbreakable, until the weapon struck. Owen felt it happen, experienced the searing pain of energy disrupting every system simultaneously. Worse than the physical agony was the sensation of the bond tearing, Draven's presence suddenly distant, muffled, like shouting through thick walls. The terror of being alone again after finally finding connection. Owen reached out through the connection, trying to find the damaged bond between Ember and Draven. It was there, a thread of gold and silver but frayed and weak. He could sense Draven's presence on the other side, trying to maintain contact but unable to bridge the gap fully. We can fix this, Owen thought, hoping Ember could understand. You're not alone. I'm here. He's here. We just need to. Pain exploded through him. Not Ember's pain, his own. The connection was too strong, too much for his human neurology to handle. His synapses fired randomly, muscles spasming. He could hear alarms in the distant physical world, feel hands grabbing him trying to pull him back. No, he thought desperately, not yet. We're so close, Ember's presence wrapped around him trying to shield him from the worst of the feedback, but she was too damaged, too weak to protect both of them. The energy flowing through their connection began to cascade, building toward a catastrophic surge. Then a third presence entered the connection. Draven Dodden, Owen felt the Emperor's consciousness join them, strong and steady despite the danger. Draven had connected his own neural implant to the system, adding himself to the bond despite knowing the risk. His presence stabilized the cascade, his energy flowing into the circuit to balance the load. Together, the three of them existed in a space beyond physical reality. Owen could feel Draven's thoughts, his emotions, everything that made him who he was. The weight of leadership, the loneliness of command, the desperate love for the dragon who had been his only true friend. The grudging respect that had grown into genuine affection for the human mechanic who refused to give up. Draven could feel Owen in return. The simple joy of fixing broken things, the satisfaction of solving impossible problems. The deep-seated need to help that drove him to accept cases no one else would touch. The growing bond with Ember that had become as important to Owen as his own heartbeat, and Ember felt them both. Two different kinds of consciousness, two different ways of experiencing the universe, but both reaching out to her with the same fundamental message. You matter. You are loved. Live, her heart responded. At the center of her being, in that fractured crystalline matrix, something shifted. New structures began forming, growing from the combined energy of their three-way bond. The fractures didn't simply heal. They transformed, incorporating the damage into new patterns that made the heart stronger than it had been before. Owen felt the moment the heart stabilized, felt the surge of energy that flooded through Ember's systems. Her consciousness blazed like a star, brilliant and alive. The pain that had been her constant companion faded to manageable levels. Her systems, starved for so long, suddenly had the power they needed. Thank you. Her presence whispered into both their minds. Real words this time, not just emotions. Thank you for not giving up on me. Owen wanted to respond, but the physical world was pulling at him insistently. His body was shutting down, overwhelmed by the experience. He felt himself falling backward through layers of consciousness, retreating from the shared space. The last thing he felt was Draven's presence supporting him, guiding him back, and Ember's joy radiating like sunrise. Owen woke in an Imperial medical facility 3 days later. His head felt like someone had taken a hammer to it from the inside, and his mouth tasted like recycled air filters, but he was alive. Welcome back, Draven's voice said from beside his bed. The Emperor looked exhausted, his usually perfect posture slouched with fatigue. You have been unconscious for 73 hours. The medical staff was beginning to worry. Ember, Owen croaked. See for yourself. Draven gestured to the room's far wall, which was actually a massive window. Beyond the glass, in a specially constructed habitat, Ember stretched her wings. They caught the light and scattered it into rainbows, each crystalline scale perfect and gleaming. She turned her head toward the window, and her eyes, bright gold and fully aware, fixed on Owen. He felt her presence in his mind, stronger than ever. You're awake. Good. I was getting worried, Owen laughed, which hurt his head but felt wonderful anyway. You can talk now. Real words. Our bond is stronger than before, more complete. She sounded amused. You gave me part of yourself to heal with. Did you think that would not have consequences? Is she speaking to you? Draven asked. You can't hear her? Only impressions, emotions. Our bond is still damaged, though much improved. Draven didn't sound bitter about it, merely stating fact. You have become her primary connection now. I am secondary. Owen heard the pain in those words. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Do not apologize. Draven stood, walking to the window. You saved her life. The nature of your bond is irrelevant compared to that. Besides, I can still feel her. That is enough. Both of you stop this foolishness. Ember's voice filled both their minds simultaneously. Stronger for Draven now than it had been before. I am not choosing between you. You are both mine and I am both of yours. This is how it should be. Draven smiled slightly. She always was imperious. A medical technician entered, running scans with efficient movements. Your neural pathways are recovering well. You should be fully functional within a week. Can I go back to my shop? Owen asked. Absolutely not, the technician said firmly. You need rest and... Alarms screamed through the facility. Not medical alarms, security alerts. The medical technician's communicator crackled with urgent messages. All personnel, this is a priority alert. Station is in lockdown. Unauthorized military action in progress. All Imperial forces report to... The message cut off. Emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in red. Through the window, Owen saw Ember rise to her feet, her scales blazing with aggressive warning colors. What's happening? Owen demanded, trying to sit up and immediately regretting it as dizziness swamped him. Draven was already at the room's communication panel, trying to access station systems. His expression darkened. We are locked out. Someone has taken control of the station's security network. A new voice crackled through the facility's speakers. High Engineer Voss. Citizens of Station Tertius 9 remain calm. We are implementing emergency protocols for your safety. Emperor Draven has been deemed unfit for command due to his compromised judgment regarding the voidworm situation. By authority of the Imperial Science Council, I am assuming temporary control until proper leadership can be established. That's not protocol, Owen said. That's a coup. Yes, Draven said grimly, his hand moving to the ceremonial weapon at his side. And we are trapped in a medical facility with minimal defenses. The door to Owen's room hissed open. Guards entered, but their uniforms were wrong. Not Imperial ceremonial armor, but military combat gear. Their weapons were raised and ready. Emperor Draven, the lead guard said, his voice flat. High Engineer Voss request your presence. Please come peacefully. And if I refuse? Draven asked calmly. Then we have orders to use necessary force. The guard's weapon trained on Owen. Starting with the human. Draven raised his hand slowly, his golden eyes never leaving the guard's weapon. There is no need for violence. I will come peacefully. Leave the human here. He is injured and poses no threat. Our orders include securing both of you, the guard replied. The human mechanic is to be taken into custody for his own protection. Protection from what? Owen asked, finally managing to sit up despite the spinning in his head. From making poor decisions. A new voice spoke from the doorway as High Engineer Voss entered, flanked by more armed guards. You have become far too involved in Imperial affairs, Owen Blake. Your unorthodox bond with the voidworm represents a dangerous precedent. Non-Corsari forming connections with Imperial assets cannot be tolerated. She's not an asset, Owen said through gritted teeth. She's a person. She is a weapon. Voss approached Ember's observation window, studying her with cold, analytical interest. The last surviving voidworm, with capabilities that could turn the tide of any conflict. And you have contaminated her with your human influence, making her unpredictable and difficult to control. Through his bond, Owen felt Ember's rage building. Her scales brightened to white-hot intensity, and the temperature in her habitat began rising. The observation window's environmental warnings flashed critical alerts. You are distressing her, Draven said, his voice carrying an edge of warning. I strongly suggest you withdraw. She will calm once proper protocols are reestablished. Voss gestured and guards moved toward the habitat's access door. We have prepared a containment system. She will be sedated and transported to a secure facility where real scientists can study her properly. Don't let them take me. Ember's voice filled Owen's mind, tinged with panic. I cannot go back to that. I will not. Owen looked at Draven and saw the same desperate calculation in the Emperor's eyes. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and Owen could barely stand. But surrendering meant condemning Ember to the same fate that had nearly killed her before. "Here's a better idea," Owen said loudly. "How about you all leave before you do something phenomenally stupid?" Voss turned to him with an expression of amused contempt. "And what exactly do you think you can do, human? You can barely walk. I don't need to walk." Owen reached out through his bond with Ember, not with words but with intent. "I just need to think." The observation window exploded. Not from physical force, but from a precisely controlled pulse of energy that Ember projected. The glass shattered into harmless fragments, and Ember flowed through the opening with terrifying grace. She was enormous in the confined space, her wingspan nearly touching the walls. Her presence filled the room like a physical force. The guards opened fire. Energy bolts struck Ember's scales and scattered harmlessly, absorbed and redirected by the crystalline structure of her body. She roared, and the sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Guards stumbled backward, weapons falling from hands that clutched at ears. "Get on," Ember commanded, lowering her shoulder beside Owen's bed. Owen didn't argue. He rolled off the bed and onto Ember's back, grabbing hold of the ridge where her neck met her shoulders. Draven moved with surprising speed, vaulting onto Ember behind Owen. "Stop them," Voss shouted, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Ember launched herself through the shattered window and into the medical facility's main corridor. She ran with fluid power, her claws scoring the metal floor. Guards appeared ahead, forming a firing line. Ember didn't slow. She spread her wings and energy crackled along their crystalline surfaces. A wave of force exploded outward, slamming the guards against the walls without seriously injuring them. "Left at the next junction," Draven called, his voice steady despite the chaos. "There's a cargo bay with external access." Ember followed his guidance, her mind linked closely enough with Owen's that she understood the moment he did. They crashed through a series of security doors, Ember's enhanced strength making short work of barriers designed to stop normal beings. The cargo bay was vast and, thankfully, mostly empty, but between them and the external airlock stood a full security team with heavy weapons. And at their center, illuminated by harsh emergency lighting, was something that made Owen's blood run cold. It looked like Ember. Same general shape, same crystalline scales, but it was wrong. A corpse animated by technology rather than life. Its movements were jerky, mechanical. Its eyes glowed with artificial light instead of consciousness. This was a voidworm skeleton, retrofitted with combat systems and AI control. "You were not the first human to discover the voidworm's nature." Voss's voice echoed through the bay's speakers. "The old one's research survived in fragments. I have spent decades collecting those fragments, learning their secrets. And while I could not create a true voidworm, I found that the remains of dead ones could be repurposed." The mechanical dragon attacked. It moved with inhuman speed, its AI-controlled body unconstrained by pain or hesitation. Ember met it head-on, and the two dragons collided with devastating force. Crystalline scales shattered. Metal tore. Energy weapons built into the mechanical dragon's body fired at point-blank range. "Get off," Ember commanded, and Owen felt her intent. She couldn't fight effectively while protecting them. Owen slid from her back, pulling Draven with him. They hit the deck and rolled, taking cover behind a cargo container. The battle between the two dragons shook the entire bay. Ember was stronger, more alive, more capable. But the mechanical dragon was relentless, feeling no pain, adapting its tactics with computer precision. "We need to disable it," Owen shouted over the sounds of combat. "There has to be a weakness. It is running on a power core." Draven pointed to the mechanical dragon's chest where a pulsing reactor glowed through gaps in its armor. "But that core is unstable. Voss's people could never perfect the energy balance. It is slowly building toward critical failure. How slowly? Hours, perhaps days." "We don't have hours." Owen watched Ember dodge a plasma burst, her movements graceful but showing signs of fatigue. She was still recovering, not at full strength. "What if we speed up the failure?" The core would detonate. The explosion would destroy everything within several hundred meters. "Including us?" "Most certainly." Owen's mind raced. Through his bond with Ember, he could feel her determination mixed with growing desperation. The mechanical dragon was learning her patterns, adapting its attacks, and the guards were moving to flank them, waiting for an opening to recapture Draven and Owen. An insane idea formed. I need to get inside that thing. Absolutely not, Draven said flatly. It's the only way. If I can access its core directly, I can trigger an overload but give us time to evacuate. I've worked with unstable reactors before. I can make it a controlled detonation instead of random failure. You will be killed the moment you approach it, not if Ember creates an opening. Owen reached out through their bond. What I'm about to suggest is incredibly stupid. I am listening, Ember responded, slamming the mechanical dragon against the bay wall. I need you to let it grab you, hold you. Then I can get to its core while it's distracted. He felt her horror at the suggestion. It will damage me severely, I know. I'm sorry, but I don't see another option. Through the bond, Owen felt Ember's acceptance. She had survived worse. She would survive this. For a few seconds. Get ready to run, Owen told Draven. When I trigger the overload, you'll have maybe 3 minutes to reach the airlocks. I will not leave you behind. Yes, you will. Because if you stay, Ember will stay to protect you and then we all die. Owen met the Emperor's eyes. You need to get her out of here. She's the last of her kind. That matters more than either of us. Before Draven could argue, Ember made her move. She let the mechanical dragon's attack connect, allowed its claws to close around her body. It held her tight, its AI recognizing the advantage, preparing for a finishing blow. Owen ran. His legs were weak, his vision still blurry from the neural trauma, but he pushed through it. He sprinted across the open bay floor, guards shouting behind him. Energy bolts seared past his head. He didn't slow. The mechanical dragon's chest was right in front of him, the reactor core exposed through battle damage. Owen grabbed exposed wiring and hauled himself up, climbing the construct like a ladder. The mechanical dragon's attention was fixed on Ember, trying to crush her, not recognizing the human as a threat. Owen reached the core and started pulling panels, exposing the reactor's control systems. They were crude compared to proper engineering, held together with improvisation and desperation. He could see exactly what Voss had done, where the shortcuts were, where the balance was failing. Sorry about this, Owen muttered, and started ripping out safety systems. The reactor's readings spiked immediately. The mechanical dragon's movements became erratic as power fluctuated. Its grip on Ember loosened and she tore free, scales cracked and leaking luminescent fluid but alive. Go, Owen commanded through their bond. Get Draven and get out. What about you? I'll be right behind you. Now go. Ember hesitated for one terrible moment, then grabbed Draven in her claws and launched toward the airlock. The Emperor's shout of protest was lost in the reactor's rising scream. Owen worked with desperate speed, his mechanics' instincts guiding him. He couldn't stop the meltdown now, but he could shape it. He reconfigured the containment field, creating a directional blast that would vent through the bay's ceiling instead of expanding in all directions. It would still destroy the bay, but the rest of the station might survive. The reactor hit critical. Owen had maybe 30 seconds. He jumped from the mechanical dragon's chest and ran. His vision narrowed to a tunnel. His lungs burned. Behind him, the light from the failing reactor grew brighter, unbearably bright. He wasn't going to make it. Then Ember was there, diving back into the bay despite having already reached safety. She grabbed Owen in her claws without slowing and rocketed toward the airlock. They cleared it with seconds to spare. The cargo bay detonated behind them. The explosion tore through Station Tertius 9's cargo section, but Owen's directional modifications held. The blast vented into space through the bay's ceiling, a pillar of fire and debris that looked like a dying star. Emergency bulkheads sealed, containing the damage. The station shuddered but survived. Ember set Owen down in a maintenance corridor far from the explosion. Her scales dimmed and several cracked from where the mechanical dragon had gripped her. Draven was already there, his ceremonial robes torn and scorched. Around them, the station's alarm system screamed warnings about hull breaches and atmospheric loss. That was the most reckless, foolish, idiotic thing I have ever witnessed, Draven said. Then he grabbed Owen in an embrace that would have been crushing if the Emperor wasn't being careful. Thank you. You promised you would be right behind me. Ember's voice in his mind carried both relief and reproach. That was a lie. Technical truth, Owen managed, his whole body shaking with adrenaline crash. I was behind you, just not as close behind as I implied. Through their bond, he felt her exasperation mixed with fierce affection. Impossible human. Station security forces rounded the corner, but these wore proper Imperial colors, not the combat gear of Voss's rebels. Their commander saluted Draven crisply. "Your Majesty, we've retaken Central Command. High Engineer Voss is in custody." "Casualties?" Draven asked. "Minimal. Your directive to avoid lethal force was followed. Most of Voss's supporters surrendered once they realized his coup had failed." Owen slumped against the corridor wall as relief washed through him. His part in this was done. He'd saved Ember, helped stop a coup, and somehow survived. All he wanted now was to sleep for about a week. "Owen Blake." Voss's voice crackled through a guard's communicator. The commander looked apologetic but held it out. "The prisoner insists on speaking with you." Owen took the device reluctantly. "What do you want, Voss?" "To ask a question." The high engineer's voice was strained. "How did you do it? How did a human mechanic with no formal training accomplish what the Empire's finest engineers could not?" Owen thought about his answer carefully. "Because I didn't try to fix a machine. I helped heal a person. You saw Ember as a problem to solve. I saw her as someone worth knowing." There was a long silence. "I spent 60 years studying the Old One's technology. I dedicated my life to understanding their achievements. And in the end, it meant nothing." "It wasn't nothing," Owen said, surprising himself. "You learned everything except the most important part. The Old Ones didn't create the voidworms to be weapons. They made them to be companions, partners. You can't force that kind of relationship with protocols and control systems." "Perhaps." Voss sounded old, defeated. "Perhaps I was too focused on what could be taken from them to see what could be given." The communication cut off. Owen handed the device back to the guard, feeling strangely sorry for the engineer. Voss had been wrong, dangerously so, but his mistake came from the same place as many mistakes, wanting to control things that needed freedom instead. 3 weeks later, Owen stood in his shop on Station Tertius 9, surveying the repairs. The explosion had caused significant damage to the lower levels, but reconstruction was already well underway. His shop had survived intact, protected by distance and emergency bulkheads. Ember lounged on a custom-built platform that took up half the space, her scales fully healed and gleaming. She watched with amusement as Owen struggled with paperwork on a datapad. "Stop glaring at the screen," she advised. "The forms will not complete themselves through intimidation." "I fix things," Owen grumbled. "I don't do administrative work." "Why does the Empire need 7 different forms just to establish a business license?" "Because bureaucracy is eternal and universal," Draven said, entering the shop with his usual perfect timing. He'd been visiting regularly during the recovery period, their unlikely friendship solidifying. "I could have an aide handle this for you." "No thanks. If I'm going to run a business, I should at least understand the paperwork." Owen set the data pad aside. "Besides, you didn't come here to discuss forms." "No." Draven settled into a chair that Owen had specifically reinforced for Corsari weight. "I came to officially present my offer. Chief Engineer of the Corsari Empire. You would have authority over all technological development, unlimited resources, a position of tremendous influence." "I already told you no," Owen said gently. "I know, but I am required to ask formally, and you are required to refuse formally. Politics." Draven smiled slightly. "Though I confess I am relieved by your answer." "Really? Why?" "Because if you accepted, you would be miserable within a month. You are not meant for boardrooms and policy meetings. You are meant for this." Draven gestured at the cluttered shop. "Creating small miracles in cramped spaces." Owen laughed. "That's probably the nicest way anyone's ever called me a grease monkey. I prefer to think of you as an artist whose medium is broken things." Draven produced a document and set it on the workbench. "Since you refuse employment, I am establishing you as an independent contractor. You will have access to Imperial resources when needed, protection when requested, and the freedom to work on whatever cases you choose." "What's the catch?" "No catch, though I would ask that you accept occasional commissions from the Empire. We have many items that are broken in ways my engineers do not understand. You have proven uniquely capable of seeing problems from unconventional angles." Owen scanned the document. The terms were more than generous, almost embarrassingly so. "You're paying me to do what I already do anyway. I am ensuring you have the means to continue doing it properly." Draven stood. "You saved Ember's life? You saved my empire from civil war. This is inadequate compensation for either, but it is what I can offer. I didn't do it for compensation. I know. That is precisely why you are receiving it. After Draven left, Owen sat with Ember in comfortable silence. Through their bond, he felt her contentment, her joy at simply being alive and healthy. His own feelings reflected hers. Everything had changed in the past months, but somehow he'd ended up exactly where he belonged. A chime announced a visitor. Owen looked up to see a small alien child standing in his doorway, barely reaching his waist. The child's species was Caladan, if Owen remembered correctly. With pale blue skin and large silver eyes. Those eyes were wet with tears. "Can I help you?" Owen asked gently. The child held up a small container. Inside was a creature that looked like a cross between a cat and a lizard, its bioluminescent patches dim and flickering. "The doctors say my friend is dying. They say her biomatrix is incompatible with medicine. They say nothing can fix her." Owen's heart clenched. He'd heard those words before. Nothing can fix her. Beyond saving. Let her go peacefully. He'd proven those words wrong once. "Let me take a look," Owen said, taking the container carefully. Ember raised her head, her attention focusing on the small dying creature with interest. Through their bond, Owen felt her approval, her encouragement. "You see?" she said, her mental voice warm. "This is your gift, not just fixing machines, healing the bonds between beings." The child watched with desperate hope as Owen carried the container to his workbench. He began running scans, his mind already working through the problem. The creature's biomatrix was indeed failing, rejected its own body's systems in a cascade that would be fatal within days. But Owen had seen this kind of problem before. He knew what to look for now. The signs of a bond-dependent species, the markers of a creature that needed connection to thrive. "What's your name?" Owen asked the child. "Pip." "Okay, Pip, and your friend?" "Her name is Glimmer." "Well, Pip, I think Glimmer is sick because she's lonely. Her species needs a close bond with their companions to stay healthy. Without that connection, their systems start shutting down." Owen kept his voice simple, direct. "Have you been spending a lot of time with her?" Pip's eyes widened. "No, my parents said I needed to focus on school. I have been too busy to play with her much. That's the problem. She doesn't need medicine. She needs you." Owen set up a simple biomonitor. "But we need to strengthen your bond properly. It'll take some time and patience. Are you willing to work with me?" "Yes." Pip's entire face lit up with hope. "Anything!" "I do not want Glimmer to die." Owen smiled. "Then let's get started." Over the next several hours, Owen worked with Pip and Glimmer, teaching the child how to properly bond with a biomechanical companion. It was simpler than the process with Ember, appropriate for a smaller being, but the principle was the same: connection, understanding, care. By the time Pip's parents arrived to collect their child, Glimmer's bioluminescent patches were glowing steadily. The creature curled in Pip's arms, purring with contentment. The parents stared in shock, having clearly expected to find their child crying over a dead pet. "How much do we owe you?" the father asked, reaching for his credit account. "Nothing," Owen said. "Just make sure Pip spends time with Glimmer every day. That's all the payment I need." After they left, Ember rumbled with satisfaction. "That was well done." "It felt good," Owen admitted. "Helping them. You will help many more," Ember predicted. Word spreads. Soon beings from across the galaxy will bring you their broken companions, their impossible problems. Sounds like a lot of work. "It is what you were meant for," she said simply. "Just as I was meant to find you." Owen climbed onto Ember's platform and settled against her warm scales. Through the shop's window he could see the stars, countless and brilliant. Somewhere out there something was broken. Someone needed help. A companion was dying while experts declared the situation hopeless. And Owen would be ready. "Hey, Ember?" he said quietly. "Yes, thank you." "For not giving up. For being patient while I figured things out. For coming back for me when I was being an idiot." "Thank you for seeing me," she replied. "For treating me as a person when everyone else saw only a problem. For caring enough to risk everything." They sat together in comfortable silence as Station Tertius 9 continued its eternal rotation, a small shop in a forgotten corner that had become something more, a place where the impossible became possible, where broken things could be made whole, where bonds could be forged that transcended species, language, and logic. Outside, in the vast darkness between stars, the universe spun on. And in that universe, one human mechanic and one ancient dragon had found something precious: purpose, partnership, home. The stars shone on, and in a small shop that smelled of oil and hope, Owen Blake smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new impossible cases, new beings who needed someone stubborn enough to try. He couldn't wait.